Jean Fox.
Here.
Carolyn Gomes.
Here.
Sherry Barron.
Here.
Robert
Here.
Clark. Derek Gracia.
Here.
Steve Owen.
Here.
Laura Ramsden. Here. Will Sinkler.
Here.
Okay, recording the meeting, we have LakeCAM and Sleeve. Okay, that's good. Pledge of Allegiance, would you join me, please? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anyone here for public participation? Minutes. So we want to zip through this agenda.
I'll approve those.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have, and these are the February 7?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Now I do. Any discussion?
Do we need to reference the joint meeting with at all?
I'm sorry?
This was the joint meeting with the towns. We need to reference that they were present?
I don't think so. They called their own meeting
Got
to
it.
order. It wouldn't have been a bad idea to put in those Steve, but we met with them, but it's kind of covered. Say the very first item under 7, new business, the town administrators in attendance. Okay?
Done.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
I'll make the same motion for the executive session minutes
With
with the stipulation
that
that.
we hold off.
Hold
until
on.
we- yeah. That one. Okay. And I have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
They should be,
Any abstentions?
Oh, there it is, thank
Oh,
you.
you can,
Sorry.
it's going to take an hour to read. You good, Sherry? All right.
Good.
So without further ado, let's have our presentation so you can get on the road safely.
Thank you. So ARHS had their Voice of Democracy winners present at the Freetown VFW last week. It includes Sean Bussey, Cam Silver, and Carly Muner. All gave excellent presentations. Thank you to John Remdies for supporting this competition and Mrs. Barnicoat for attending. Auditions for the music festival sponsored by the Southeastern Mass School Bandmasters Association were held February 3rd, and the following Aponequid students made the ensemble: Rena Cotta, Grace Kudo, Kylie Gracian, Grace Manning, and Kelsey Rio. Congratulations to them. Jack Dupree, Becky Goodfellow, Rena Cotta, Ben Kitchen, Katie Little, Reese Medeiros, and Emily Porter all participated in the 5th Annual High School Honor Band Festival. ARHS held a technical school and military fair. Over 50 10th, 11th, and 12th graders participated. They were able to meet with reps from various technical as well as military fields. Congrats to all honor students for the second quarter. 4% of the school achieved highest honors, 7% achieved high honors, and 34% achieved honors. The AP Chemistry class with Mrs. Mills toured the MIT nuclear reactor and learned about many research projects that they hold there. Congratulations to Caitlin Sardellis for being selected to attend the MIAA Annual Indoor Track and Field Breakfast. She was also the SCC MVP for track. ARHS held a Laker Day the Friday before February break. The entire student body and staff attended, and we received a citation from the state reps Carol Fiola, Keiko Oral, and Paul Schmidt for the Aponequid's outstanding MCAS scores, as well as the school committee chair, Jean Fox, presenting a banner on behalf of the school committee. Also, Dude Be Nice Week came to its conclusion with a keynote speaker, Ed Garrity. Julia Norton, Jordan McCloskey, and Kate Sardellis all finished 5th overall for the pentathlon for states. Kate also won 3,105 points, which qualified her for nationals. The Laker hockey team had an excellent season, but lost to a very good team, Nauset. Jared Stevens, on the hockey team, received his 100th point. Jaden Estrada won the Division III Wrestling Championship. And the boys basketball team won the SCC Sportsmanship Award and is now in the finals. Congrats to Sophie Gosher, who was named the SCC MVP for basketball. The ARHS Spring Sports registration is now open for all who are interested. And following Dude Be Nice Week, ARHS is hosting a Red Cross blood drive and is encouraging all eligible students and staff to donate blood. The annual Bristol Community College on-the-spot admission day was a productive day with 30 grade 12 students meeting with admissions counselors and were accepted on the spot. there will be another session Thursday, March 29th for interested people. And finally, the class of 2019 will have a college admission seminar for parents and guardians on Thursday, March 22nd at 6 p.m. in the ARHS lecture hall.
Nothing going on.
It's a busy month.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you covered all the bases very quickly. So now you should probably go so you get home.
And Robert,
safe.
where are you off to tomorrow?
I'm up to DECA
DECA.
States to participate in my category, and right now, Cam Silva, who is
Yeah.
the other rep, is at MASC, which is the Massachusetts
Yes.
Associated Student Council state event, and hopefully win gold council. So a
Hopefully.
lot going on this month.
Yes.
Good luck, good luck.
Congratulations, and thank you again for braving the elements to inform us.
Have a good
Yes,
time.
Steve?
So one thing I just wanted to highlight on there that maybe put a little bit more bigger font than the superintendent is that sportsmanship award that the entire team made. I had the opportunity to go to the game the other night.
I heard it was incredible.
My kids are still young enough that they like to hang out with their cool dad. At least that's the story I'm going to stick with. They just need a ride, really. But the sportsmanship that they displayed was absolutely impressive. Both all aspects of the game, before, during, after. Not only the students in the stand we should be proud of, but the entire team. As a parent, seeing the number of young kids in the stands who witnessed that, both the shaking of the officials' hands, the attention of the national anthem, everything, it didn't go unnoticed. So kudos to the high school athletic department. From a parent perspective, thanks to those students and their parents, because it was refreshing to see, in spite of everything else going on in the world, that something like this and the sportsmen that displayed. So really should be highlighted a little bit more than, I know we just talked about it, but a team award is pretty impressive.
It's absolutely impressive, and thank you for bringing that out. But so was the Dude Be Nice week. I'm sorry, that was
Yeah.
incredible. Sending all the right messages, wearing the shirts, pretty good stuff to set the tone. And these are trying times in school, so as we all know, and we've had many discussions over the last couple of weeks about how it's scary out there to see us come together as a community, whether it's in the athletic fields or in the classrooms, even at pep rallies. Pretty impressive. And I feel really good about it. So thank you. School improvement plan updates are going to be postponed to August, yeah, right. April 4th, the April 4th meeting, right.
Yeah, we have
So-
a meeting on the 21st, but the next presentations will be on the 4th. There'll be school improvement plans in addition to the budget hearing on the 4th.
Yeah, and that's fine. It'll be a lot, but we'll do it. So old business, class size, staffing, education,
Informational,
standard,
it's been a couple of months,
Yeah.
so I provide you with an update. If you notice, there's a change of about 3 students, but there's no rhyme or reason to it. If you notice, you'll have 4 down at Assawamsett, 1 up at Freetown Elementary School. But it does even speak to the fact that even during times where you wouldn't think there would be much change, there is change even from January. In a couple months out, will continue to keep you updated on
you.
enrollment. Be happy to answer any specific questions.
So there's movement even at this time of the year.
Yeah, even-
Interesting, yeah. Thank you.
I think it speaks more to families in general, right?
That's what I meant, yeah.
Really, more than
The
anything,
movement of
yeah.
families, they're moving
happening.
whenever they can.
Absolutely.
So are you going to do the budget?
Yeah, so the 18 budget was provided as a summary piece. FinCom did have, we did meet, and really the update is, as Mr. Baker's been sharing with you, very tight, right? We're gonna be certifying a dollar amount in
Yeah.
just a moment, which is consistent with the dollar amount that Mr. Baker's been presenting. We continue to monitor the circumstances and situation, and, I'll give you more details as we kind of progress. We are not limiting spending. If something needs to be taken care of, it's being taken care of, and obviously we'll have to take a close look at this. But in all likelihood, as Mr. Baker has alluded to on more than one occasion, not only will the money be spent, but we may have to tap into that $84,000 as well to close out the books this year, so.
Okay, yes, he's been right on, yes, Steve?
Related to the budget, anything this last storm that sort of hit us in an excess?
Yeah, we had a couple of
Yeah.
well, when you consider maybe, I guess, some of our neighbors and
Yeah.
some of the devastation that has transpired along the coast and so forth, I guess it doesn't, I guess appeals to that extent, but we did have a freezer go down at the high school, so we lost about $5,000 worth of food, which will take some of the profit from our food service piece, that will come right out of that account.
Yep.
It was a result of power going out and a failure there. We are hopeful that we can submit reimbursement for that, though, based on the emergency situation. We'll take a look at it. We had a door and a window at Swampscott. We had a couple of areas where we had some water, but in general on the campus in good shape. We had an issue with the pool as it relates to a pump / motor as a result of the power going down. Still, and Steve, as you know from your Laker piece, still don't have that back up and running at this point. So it's off season for our kids, but not for groups that are using the facility. Taking a look at that. So I would say in general, all things considered, obviously we don't want any difficulties. Could have been far worse, but we did have a couple of situations. The most dramatic, I would say, would be the pool damage and the food service.
We have no backup generators for
To do
those
that.
systems.
Yeah, we have generators here. It burnt out when the power went out, and so we're trying to figure out what transpired there. The other schools were fine. And we're gonna see if we can seek some reimbursement as it relates to submitting paperwork as it relates to that piece.
Yeah.
Again, it was a a short time, but obviously with any commodity like that, you really can't chance that, so obviously we made that determination.
Yes, ma'am.
You had a generator here and it failed?
No, we have a generator, so we have emergency generators at the schools, and what happened is it's on a 3-phase piece. It only kicked in 1 phase, so it didn't record that the power had been out. As a result, it had to be manually turned on here. At the other 2 schools, it did read that. We're trying to clarify how that would happen, how we can fix that in the future. So the feed that came in through the high school, and I apologize if I don't have the details, this is where you really need your business manager and director of facilities to share. It's not that it wasn't functioning, but it wasn't reading that power had been out. I actually happened to be here that afternoon as we were waiting for kids. The 2 elementary schools kept power. Keep in mind, our last 2 buses, our kids got home at the elementary school on Friday at the last bus left FVS at 6:10, and at Assawamsett, the last students were picked up after 6 o'clock. Had power at both of those satellite schools. Administrators, principals, and all support staff were there. The intermediate school and middle school generators went on. This generator did not go on, and I was generally concerned, quite frankly, because it should have. The background was we manually kicked it on. It wasn't reading that, it wasn't receiving sufficient enough power, so it's dark here. Actually, we had kids here, and obviously we had administrators here, and we kind of addressed the issue. Thankfully, it was early enough in the day that it didn't trigger that, but that's the reason. It should have functioned properly.
See?
So I guess the short answer, there'll be a post-mortem of things that didn't work and ways that we can try to address in the future, correct?
Yeah, we kind of, I think from a people perspective, we handled it well. We had really kind of prepared, meaning making
Okay.
sure that office staff were present. So one of the decisions that we made early on is that any students who went to a home where their children, well, keep in mind, we had roads blocked at that point. So in some instances, there weren't people that were at home or they couldn't get home. So the plan was that we would return any of those students so the bus route could continue and that they would remain there until parents got there. We had circumstance. I had a parent reach out to me and say, and literally say to me, so when I pick up my child, now what do? I can't get home. Friday night I offered pizza. I was like, I mean, literally they couldn't get back to their own home, but I mean, my concern was obviously making sure the child was with the parent.
Well, is that why the buses left late then?
Yeah, so we had.
I was unaware of that.
Yeah, so we had, well, the buses weren't, the high
o'clock's
school
late.
piece, well, late because, by the time literally you couldn't get to roads and sections and things
Right.
because of trees,
So it was the rerouting and all of that.
So
that
the
we
good
had.
news is with
Good.
technology today, we can call bus routes. So we can identify groups of students and let parents
Right.
know, because, we all have been there. At the end of the day, you're wondering what's happening.
Get frantic.
And administrators, so it was a good, Tuesday when we had kind of a debriefing with all the principals, we talked about the conversation, what did we learn from that experience and what can we do a little bit better moving forward. Ken Resendes said to me, he's been doing this, 31 years? I think I said at 29, he's going to be beat by 2. He said it was probably the second worst day that he's experienced, interestingly, right? Not even a snowstorm per se, but the road blockage, the power outages, the failure for radios going down and those type of circumstances,
Yeah.
so.
Did you have another question,
No,
Bob?
it's all right. let it go.
End of the day, Kenny called me about 6:20, and when those last kids were home, and he called me on my cell and said, good news is that what we have to report is all our kids are home and safe.
That's
Okay.
the bottom line right there. We
Right.
can look at procedures
Well, we
and
will
other
have
things
to
like
do a
that. is one-
postmortem on this one
Yeah.
because, losing stuff like that, not having generators kick in. We can't help all the trees that went down.
Yeah.
That was everywhere, but, yeah, okay, thank you for that. So 6C, the update.
6C is really going to be through executive session and then out, right? Where the position is
Yep.
that we're going to ask the committee to take action on this. We have already had one transition day with what potentially officially will be the new director. She spent some time meeting support staff with the understanding that hopefully we're going to, actually, when I met with her yesterday, she was in the district for about 3 hours with Mr. Baker and the business staff. I had indicated to her I wasn't sure we were going to have this meeting tonight and
Yeah.
that the formal vote would need to take place probably on the 21st, because at the time, speaking of
Right.
weather and circumstances, I was considering potentially canceling all after-school activities and so forth. But the update is we are progressing, and
Right.
certainly I would ask the committee to take action tonight, which we intend to do a little bit later on.
Okay, so the E&D certification we need to vote on.
I would request
have
that you
that.
vote to approve the closing entries on the attached as presented by Mr. Baker.
Right.
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstention, motion carries. Flush with cash. New business, budget progress report.
So Mr. Baker has provided, as he did with the regional FinCom, not only the budget summary, but for the 19, an updated assessment sheet there.
Yeah, I saw that.
Not the easiest to read per se, I get
How did
that.
that happen?
But what I would say to you is what I would point to, from a month ago, we have made a couple of changes to the assessment moving forward for the public hearing on April 4th. I would first point to line 11. This is not as significant. A couple of adjustments had to be made to the two towns. The bottom line number was the same. There had to be some adjustments in relation to capital debt in one town compared to the other. So the bottom line number on the right-hand column on line number 11 is the same. It was an adjustment within the two towns. It was a minor adjustment under $10,000 that needed to be corrected. The other item that I would bring to your attention is the bottom line increase for the assessment and percentage has not changed, but we have reduced the request for the stabilization fund to $250,000. So that money has been rolled into the operational assessment piece to cover anticipated projected costs in special education. If you recall, that number in February, when I initially presented that, was something like 506. If you recall even further, my preliminary ideas when I had presented early on in January, I was talking 650, right? I was looking at the total sped costs that we had incurred through E&D last year, reduced that amount, trying to be conservative to 506. It's now been reduced down to 250. I recognize the committee hasn't taken action.
Well,
It
we
doesn't
also-
change the bottom line.
We need to understand the whys, because I don't understand it.
Yeah, so the reason that number has been reduced is, the attempt was $500,000 to build into stabilization.
Right.
Was quite clear as we looked at projected costs in special education that we knew we were gonna need $250,000 of that. So rather than have a budget number of $500,000 where in July we were gonna make a request, we built it right into the assessment. So bottom line, it didn't change the dollar amount for the town.
All right.
For the assessment, but it allowed us to, again, if you think of the spirit of a stabilization fund, it's unanticipated
Right.
costs. We knew that cost, so we felt it was important that we make that reduction early on. It doesn't mean that this committee couldn't choose to put more money into that, but if you do that on top of that, obviously, then the assessment becomes greater. My attempt here was not to increase the total
I
assessment.
just don't want to keep seeing it wiggle, because, I mean, I need to make an argument for this.
Yep,
That's all,
yep.
Steve.
So we shared that at FinCom as well.
I can give you a FinCon update, but Derek had his hand
Oh, I'm
raised.
sorry, Derek.
Do you want to go? You may be saying exactly what I'm going to
Yeah.
say.
So regarding the stabilization fund, that is a topic of discussion that we are having at the FinCom level. There are some questions that Fred and the administration need to get back to FinCom and ultimately this committee as well, as far as where the funding of that account can come from. So there is, as far as how the articles are presented at town meeting, one of the representative towns was open to the fact of funding that account, not necessarily through operating revenues, but through stabilization, free cash, what have you. But we do have some work that we need to get some information from the administration. The other question is, what amount should we be asking for? I am still of the belief that we should be asking for the amount that we had to take out of E&D to put into that.
That's where I was going.
And especially if the funding aspect conversation is up, I think we need to be, that's where we need to start from. And I think that's the topic of the conversation that needs to come from there. So that's one topic area that, from a budget perspective, that I think we need to discuss for that. And, we can open up different people.
So not to interrupt, Steve, but just for clarification, so in that second document, that total amount is listed there, it's that 648 figure. Sorry, Steve.
That was it.
Yeah. We do need to start tackling a lot of these budget items, and I have a number of other ones, but I'll ask the chair, do you want to just focus these one at a time, or do you want to?
Well, I guess you've answered partially.
Yep.
My concern about the number here.
Yep. I understand where the administration is coming from, and this has been a question that I know I have asked, is the monies that we're requesting from this funds are not required as of today for the operating budget coming in. And in good faith, after looking at some of the budget more, he couldn't say.
Correct.
Correct,
That's why the number was reduced.
So that's why we
It's clear
went
that
down
we're
to
going
that
to need to use some of that money. Right.
Are there other questions on E&D before we move on? Yes, Sharon.
E&D or the special ed?
I mean, special ed.
Okay.
That's what I meant. Yes.
Mine's a quick one, Derek. So in Ellen's report tonight, she reports out that one of the elementary schools has, the staff has considered, the district should consider creating in-district programming for those students who demonstrate concerns and so forth. In this budget, are we addressing in-service, in?
The staffing
District.
number has not been increased to reflect that program to date.
Has not been
Has
increased?
not been, correct. The monies would be available, it would be a matter of moving monies from tuition into staffing if in fact that program was created. That's so when Ellen references that and the elementary does have a need, it would be the idea of building an additional classroom teacher, paraprofessional, and as a result, designating students who were considered out of district and bringing those students back. That's why I answered the question in the way I did, Sherry. Do we have monies available to address those program needs? The answer is yes, but they are currently designated in the area of tuition because those students are projected to be out of district pending this program. It's why I just want to be clear, it's why, if you're wondering how do you take a $500,000 number and whittle it down to $250? It's trying to be conservative about realizing you need to make sure you have enough money, but also projecting what the costs are, and that's the type of
And
conversation.
as long as that's done in FinCom, that's fine.
Yep.
We just need to kind of hone in on something, Derek.
Yeah, I want you to come back to me, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not in favor of a stabilization fund. And I want to explain further, but I want to let other people, and
Okay.
I think you'll get the reasoning when we
Okay,
get there.
Laura.
I just had a question about the programming that Ellen's thinking of. Is she thinking of a sub-separate
Yes.
program altogether? So it's not just related service providers to?
No, it'd be a subsector program that we feel could be addressed through a teacher and probably some paraprofessional support. Some of the additional services we could cover through other staffing that we have.
But this is not to bring children back into our district.
It
These
is.
are-
Yeah, look, they're on.
It would also address potentially some identified students who have yet to be placed, but potentially could be if we don't have the necessary supports in place. So it'd be both. But again, when you create a program, you have to show some capacity, and the capacity would be where's your identified students, right? Where are you getting those students from? Initially, they would be from identified current out-of-district students. That program would also benefit current students who might not be identified, but that could use some supports at Assawamsett. As you know, there's a need for that as well.
Anybody else on this? Or you have no answer?
I'm sure we're all worried here. I mean, we're cutting it so close. And if you're going to get into the special education stabilization, I don't want to see us make some decisions tonight or next week or next month, and then come September, have to immediately go to the stabilization fund. I'd rather see more in the budget, quite frankly, to make sure that we can do what, obviously, our staff is saying, our principals, our administrators, and our staff is saying that we need.
So Derek, maybe it's just time for you to launch into why.
Yeah, well, this goes back to Steve's point about the initial 650,000 in that stabilization
Yeah.
fund. I totally disagree with that, and I voted to create the fund in approval, just so you know, but I wanted the discussion to continue. And the more I've thought about it over time, the more I've come to the conclusion that why would we take money that once came out of E&D and put it in a stabilization fund? Why wouldn't we want the money back in E&D? So the mechanism for that, or partially in my mind, is to remove school choice as an offset to the budget for the towns. Therefore, school choice flowing through to E&D. Am I correct, Rick, in that?
Ultimately, money that would be remaining, you'd certify and
Right.
it'd be correct.
So that's a mechanism to get money to flow through E&D, rather than create a stabilization account and have our hands tied. There could be, let me give you an instance. We just heard about E&D. We just had an event at the schools that could have cost us money.
That's right.
What are the towns gonna tell us when we say, we have no money? Sorry, cut your budget? So all this discussion that we're having about programming and needs is gonna go away, because we're just gonna continue to whittle at it. Now, I said this at the finance meeting, and I'll say it at this table, and I mean it, I'll say it publicly, the cameras are here. I believe that we've been strangled financially by the towns over the last few years. Keep in mind that the towns have added to their free cash and stabilization accounts during the time when we've been using E&D to subsidize our budget. The towns have money to support this budget. It comes down to their will. It's really that simple. The fact is, if we go to the towns and say we want to offset E&D, we already started to see the queasiness at the FinCom meeting. It started to get very queasy over there. What do you mean? There's ways that we can look at this budget creatively to get money to flow through into E&D. And it's not 650,000, folks. If we reduce that offset, we're not getting 650,000 back. We're getting a piece of the pie back. But I'll take a piece of that pie in E&D, then I'll take 500,000 or 250 right now in that stabilization fund. It's a much more sustainable budget, and I would certainly ask Rick his opinion on that. Feel free. I think, Rick and Fred's opinion to weigh in on that. My opinion, not to put any words in anyone's mouth, let me back up a little bit. We're gonna reduce E&D this year, at the end of this year, possibly, it looks like.
Correct.
We're losing a senior finance official, business district person in this district who's oversaw this budget, to have the next budget come in with somebody who hasn't worked in this district. Don't get me wrong, the superintendent's here, and I have all the faith in the world in him. But I also don't want to hamstring somebody else that comes in this district with no money. How is that person gonna look when they're the ones that have to say, with Rick, we gotta cut the budget because X, Y, and Z, or we gotta make these substantial, costly cuts? I would tell you that I could support going in this direction in the event the towns couldn't support this. The fact of the matter is, I could demonstrate to all of you that the towns can. And the towns should go along with reducing down and offsetting the school choice fund. My opinion. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Rick, can you give me your opinion, or the committee's opinion on what your position would be, having money flowing to E&D versus a stabilization fund of 250?
I don't disagree with anything that Derek has shared with you tonight. I shared that at FinCom. Both Mr. Baker and I would support, obviously, the bottom line assessment, rolling all that money into operational, which would allow latitude. Again, keep in mind, we created the Special Education Stabilization Fund in an attempt to get town support. If we can keep that bottom line, which you can, that 250 is coming out of that assessment, so it's not an increase. So if in fact that balance was zero, but the assessment didn't change, we would be in a better situation as a school district. I am just not convinced the towns are there yet to support that. To Derek's point on the school choice, the only difference in being is that if we take that, weigh that as an offset revenue-wise, without some compensation, we're gonna have to increase the assessment.
Correct.
Which I would also be supportive of if we gain town support on.
I'd like to think, and I'm sure everyone would agree, that we would support the funding to a special ed stabilization fund if our E&D wasn't in the position it was.
Right.
Okay, so, but I think people can weigh in there. Any other stabilization fund, I would agree, I would not want it because I do want to go into E&D. But the special ed is an area that we're always going to have conversations where funds are not going to be. So I believe that there is a mechanism that we are going to be using these funds in the future for this type of conversation. So this is why I think it's an area we should be funding. The other piece is, I'm 99% sure that this is an area that can be funded by the town outside of their operating, which is where we were going to get the support from. If we just add it into E&D, that is a much different conversation with the towns and at town meeting. We saw it last year. And I don't think that this body should be in any position to want to go back to that approach to do it, which is why I'm in support of doing the full 648 to the special ed fund and not just having it flow into E&D in that case. I just want to clarify the school choice, and that could be a separate conversation that we have there. Keep in mind, school choice funds, we just can't put it into E&D. We are restricted to what we can spend that on. So it's not something that we can go in and go fix a generator or boiler or what have you. So we are limited into what we can actually spend that, and that came out clear from Fred at the FinCom meeting. So in order to keep it on the focus on the SPED piece, that's my opinion on that. And
Chime in, Jared.
Yeah, just a quick rebuttal. On Steve's first point, if the towns did agree and had a mechanism outside to fund $650,000, not $250,000, that may be something I'd be inclined to say, okay, let's look at that. However, let me back up. Creating a stabilization account, in my opinion, we're only kidding ourselves. That's what E&D's for. That's why E&D continues to be for. So if E&D was funded appropriately, there wouldn't be any discussion of a stabilization fund account because we'd continue to fund E&D and flow through it. The stabilization account only is going to act as an E&D account, except it's going to be more restrictive. And it's going to...
I might not be quite in agreement with that because there are plenty of uncertainties. That's what an E&D fund is for, but in the SPED world, they seem to be escalating at an exponential rate. And I don't care how careful you are with your E&D, if you get a hit like last year every single year, I don't know
But Gene,
how
it's a
that's-
funding, what I'm saying is, you're saying that's a sustainability issue of using E&D like we have.
Right.
I'm saying we have to be funded appropriately by the towns.
Yeah.
And E&D,
No, I hear you
and
on
then
that.
E&D closes out and we have that
Yeah.
issue. And that's a
I get you.
continuing issue.
Mhm.
That's a continuing commitment from the towns to do that. The stabilization fund is gonna be a one-time fund, and if it gets used, we're gonna have to go back and be
That's
part of the
right.
assessment again. So it's the same, ultimately, you're getting around it a different way.
Well, let me ask you both. What was the tone and tenor of the meeting, the direction that you felt the towns were going in? We know they have stabilization. We know we need more money.
I'd love to answer that.
I would love for you to.
I'm not here to worry about what the towns want to do because they're only doing what they feel is in their best interest, not
That wasn't
what's
the
in the best
question.
interest of the town. The towns, in my opinion, have no appetite to do anything
That
but
was
reduce
the question.
to reduce their assessment.
Right.
That doesn't make us, as a school district, a very...
Although I do, Eric, you have to agree, and both Steve, as you know, when I had stepped out, my last statement was, so I did not hear any objection or opposition to the bottom line assessment. And I intentionally said that knowing that there wasn't a vote or action taken, but you had both towns represented, and there was not objection to the bottom line dollar amount.
Let me tag on to that a little bit. I agree with what Rick's saying. The discussion, at least when I left the meeting a little early, so I didn't get into that level of the discussion. But Rick's point is that, and this is my point. If you agree that that's what your assessment is, don't tell me how the money flows through my budget.
Right.
That's our problem and us to deal with. I can't have the towns tell us, we're gonna give you that town, 5% increase, let's say, and this is where we want you to put it. The towns have made it clear in the past that we give you a sum of money that we can afford, and it's up to you to decide what to do with it.
That's
So,
absolutely right.
I'm sorry, don't tell me that I'm gonna give you 250,000 and you have to put it in the stabilization fund, or else I'm not gonna fund that budget. What does that tell you? That's a problem for me, okay? Let me back up on Steve's
Yeah.
point with school choice. So I lost my train of thought, Steve.
Where the money can be spent specifically.
Yeah, where the money can
Yeah,
be spent.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, although it has restrictions, it frees up other areas, because now we're spending money in those areas that we're not spending school choice now. So all that is moving buckets around.
Yeah.
So you could say how that works. Our budget is very, very large and has a lot of ways that you can fund
Okay,
things.
it's
So you
flexible.
could take that restriction of school choice, apply it, and use other funds in a different manner. Rick, am I correct on that?
Correct.
So,
I mean, keep in mind that the entire board, when I presented this budget, I was trying to do two things. I was trying to balance, establish that 2.5% assessment, right, which were the parameters, knowing what the town had established. Trying to recoup some money for what has been really a flawed or broken system, which is
Right.
we've been depleting our E&D, we all know that now, and trying to kind of almost split the difference of the two,
Yep.
realizing that ideally, we would have $648,000 rolled into the assessment, and that would give us where we need to be. I wasn't convinced the towns, I'm still not convinced the towns are ready to support that, so this was kind of the blend of that, right? It was kind of the difference of
Well, we
get some
talked
of
about
it
it
back
over a
and
year ago,
doing it,
how are
so.
we gonna do this, so,
Yeah.
yes.
So just to clarify.
I just want to finish my,
We-
one last statement, Steve, can I just finish? To Rick's point, right now, and to Steve's point, I think Steve's right. If we all had E&D, we would all love to support the stabilization fund, correct? We haven't, in the budgets in the last 3 to 4 years, haven't shown an ability to gain any E&D.
No, we haven't.
So for us to create a stabilization fund to continue to have no E&D, to me, is a financial atrocity for this committee to go down that road.
And the
What I
failure of
don't
us to
wanna
get A&D is really a result of them not supporting us with a.
That's
appropriate
correct.
funds.
So that's where I mean the stranglehold comes.
I got it.
That's where I mean we're getting pushed down because we're not gonna be allowed to do that.
No.
So what I don't wanna see is, I think this committee, just like the towns do themselves, has to take a position that they believe is what's in the best interest of the district. Not
Here
of
we go
what,
again.
not what we think we're gonna get for money, or what we get elected to do a job here.
Right.
We get elected to do what's in the best interest of the district. We gotta balance that with the towns, I agree. But ultimately, our job is to make sure we're providing a top-notch program. I mean, we all celebrated this year, right? When we had the banner put out in front of the school, we all celebrated. We gotta continue that celebration and that, to Rick's point, raise the bar. I mean, that's getting a little old, right, Rick? But, I mean, we continue to tout that. But you know what? If we're gonna do that, to Rick's point, and the one thing, he stays on point. The one thing I gotta say is, if we're gonna continue to do that, we need support.
We do.
And we need to stand up for what we're elected to do. Not to stand back and say, well, this is what we think the town's gonna give us, so we're gonna go with that. Because that's put us in this position right now.
That's right.
Yeah, and we went, and we had quite the battle last year just to try to recoup what was actually taken away.
And we still have no E&D.
And we still have no E&D. So, you know, you, absolutely, and everyone I think agrees with you. Unfortunately, we've been in a stranglehold with the town. So the question is, from a strategy perspective, what are our next steps to make sure that happens? And I guess it's starting with your FinCom discussion, I still don't have a good read on you know, if we're gonna have World War III, or if we're gonna have dialogue. Because so far, I'm not sensing dialogue, Steve.
I'm going to disagree with that.
Okay.
Okay, and my first statement is, I don't think this body should wait on FinCom. Okay, that's the first thing, right? We
True.
should provide some direction, we should provide some
Very true.
feedback back to the administration on that.
Yes.
With that. As far as the dialogue, it was clear that they, from one town, they couldn't support the full assessment as we presented out of their operational revenues.
Got it.
Meaning their tax revenues that they
That they
collect,
have to, yeah,
right?
yeah.
That they collect.
Okay.
Now, doesn't mean they're free cash or what have you, But there was open dialogue around whether we could present something and they could fund that out of the town stabilization free cash, something outside of their taxable. So there was that, and this is where some of the homework that we do have, that we want to have before the next meeting. So there was some dialogue around that aspect of it, and we tried to keep it to, let's talk about this year and not talk about prior years, and I think that's where we need to keep
Well,
the
no,
conversation going.
And they are also wanting
Yep,
to look
so-
forward, so, as we are. I mean, the fact is with $84,000 of stabilization, there's no forward.
I agree, and quite frankly, we're not gonna get that in one full swoop, whether it's carried
not.
directly through the town or
No.
not. So, and this is, and again, I would be against any other stabilization account, right? We're against the transportation run for that very reason.
That's right.
But where this is such a volatile topic around sped, this is gonna be money that is going to be needed probably on an annual basis. Whether we use the total amount, no, because I think this is where we need to talk about a ceiling, a floor, where those different topics come into
Well,
from.
we
So-
also have to be keenly aware of the lack of consistency on state reimbursements
That's
with
right.
respect to sped. And even though I'm hearing some rumors that circuit breaker might be a little bit better, I don't have any confidence in that. And I don't think any of us is confident that we're going to get the kinds of reimbursements that we used to get fairly substantial numbers on. That's been trending downward for a long time. I don't see that changing at all. And yet the demands, coupled with ELL demands now, put us in a far more difficult situation with respect to these kinds of expenses, and we don't have E&D to go into there.
Yeah, I don't want to go round and round, I kind
Me
of want to get
neither.
moving too, but I want to make one point, and this does go a little bit backwards. Steve was right that the town made it clear that they couldn't support the current budget out of its operating funds. The towns, that same town said that last year.
That's right.
And that same town closed money to E&D and free cash and spent money at special town meeting.
Yep,
So,
duly noted.
now both towns, I'm not gonna point one town, that happens in both towns.
It does.
So, I don't rely on that information because it's not accurate. When, Bob Clark asked a great question at every town meeting. He says, after the town meeting is over, how much money is left?
I know.
I wanna know how much money is left. And the fact of the matter is, there is always money left.
Always, yep. Yeah, and I found
Gene, you've done that.
I did, and I also,
So-
but last year I asked the same question.
So, again, I'm not asking that we raid the town's coffers, but if we're gonna have this conversation and transparency, then I can't be told that we can only afford this budget.
Over
We
and
had to go into
yeah.
stabilization, or it's a 2.5 override, when the town ends up with $1 million at the end of the day.
I know.
That is,
Bob, and-
that is what frustrates me to all ends. If we're gonna have the conversation about supporting or not supporting a budget, let's be real. And what I've asked of finance months and months ago is, and Steve asked this as well, credit to Steve, bring your budgets here as well. Because when we
Right.
open our books, we want you to open yours. That has not happened in my mind.
Well, that's unsatisfactory. Laura, then Bob.
I think one of the concerns that we have to think about going forward in terms of the assessment piece is that if we do have to dip into the special ed stabilization fund for an unanticipated cost, if it's a tuition, that student may be at that placement the following year and for
Correct.
10 more years. And then it becomes a part of our operational budget, and we can't dip into that stabilization fund year after year for that.
Correct.
Good point.
And then
Excellent
it
point.
becomes a part of the assessment to the
Right.
towns. And if that's increasing, are they going to say you still have 2.5% and you've got to take it from somewhere else? And I think that that's what we were trying to avoid by developing the
yes.
stabilization fund in the first place.
I
Is,
do too.
and I don't know if we're just getting ourselves into a,
Well, right
Bigger
now,
problem.
it's kind of convoluted. I agree. Bob.
Yeah, I know there's dialogue, but I can't help historically, because of my history, be skeptical of that dialogue. As Derek pointed out, to put money into the stabilization fund at the end, after hearing we have no money, we have no money, we have no money. I mean, philosophically, for years now, I just get the feeling that even if they have money, they don't want to give it to the schools. And how do you correct that? Or how do you need to get that word out? I mean, because it's frustrating to me to see at the end so much money in free cash going in, and yet we're told, no, we can't. And then all of a sudden, here's this very large amount going into going into their stabilization fund. So, yeah, dialogue, yes. Philosophically, I'm not convinced that they really wanna help us.
No, I think I agree.
In light of, to try and get this moving forward, I
I
think
was
one of
just
the
gonna
question
ask-
is, what is it that this committee wants to see as a dollar amount
Right.
into that special ed fund? And quite frankly, I think it's somewhere between 0 and 648. So I think from a direction standpoint, that we can guide the conversation to FinCom, what's the number that we want to present of what we want to have them fund in this special ed account?
Yep, I agree. And you're waiting on additional information too.
We're waiting on information on the presentation. We can always put in XXX with the dollar amount. It's more of the fact that because it's part of the
Gotta come up with-
assessment sheet.
So it's the big number, probably.
Yeah, so the question is, what is it that we would like to see of that number? I know Rick has presented 250. That's come down, and I know he's sensitive as far as how the assessment sheet plays out. But what is it that, from a district perspective, we want to know? I'm of the opinion it's the full 648.
Right.
But
I hear you.
let's just figure out a number and move forward with, and then go from there.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna give my vote. My vote is to take the 375 off of school choice, offsetting it, and don't fund stabilization, the special ed stabilization account.
The 375.
Take the 375 off it as an offset.
That's a separate discussion. Let's just focus on the special education
Well, I
stabilization.
It
think
goes hand in
not.
hand. It goes hand in
does.
hand.
The way he presented it, it is connected.
So you don't fund that account, in my opinion, but you totally take the 375 out of the offset in the assessment sheet.
But I think we're clear that 375 is not going to cover the base.
Rick just confirmed, that would be a
So-
better mechanism.
He said that was a better mechanism.
For
He didn't
Indy.
speak to the amount.
So if you took that line of thinking, you would need to come up with another $125,000 to cover the gap.
That's what I thought.
Okay, so.
You either have to increase the assessment or cut services as it relates
Okay.
to the program.
Yep.
Or come up with some other mechanism where you're bringing more
Right.
revenue in.
Or
Which
increase
put
the
there.
assessment, right, you got it.
I'm not
So-
saying I disagree with the logic, but I'm just saying for
Understood,
that.
but I'm looking for the
Yeah,
number.
yeah.
And that's not.
So, I mean-
And that's a good question, because I don't know that number, I didn't run those numbers.
Well, I didn't know
so,
the number
yeah.
either. That's why I wanted to know. So you're at 500 with that math.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right?
375 plus 125. You'd have to increase, you'd have to increase 150,000 on top of the 375 to the towns.
No, because if you're taking 250 out, and you're taking, so you're not
Well, you're
funding
zeroing
gen
the
ed.
stabilization, my understanding. So what you're doing is
Yeah.
you're
In this
rolling,
discussion,
375 minus
that's what's
250.
Correct.
you're
Right.
rolling 250 into the operational and then removing 375. That's how I get the 125.
Right.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that's
okay.
right, yeah.
I see.
Are we good? Is
That's
that what you're
correct.
saying?
That's correct, and we're still short 125 after that.
Correct.
That's what he said, yeah.
Okay, I'd like to run those numbers myself, but.
Well, I also want us to get out of here pretty soon, and I don't think we have
No,
all the
I think
answers.
this is a
Because
further
school choice is a
discussion.
totally separate conversation, right? And I think that's something that we need to, and I'm,
It is.
while I agree with the logic about where school choice funds, I'm not supportive of the idea of cutting it altogether, right? I think that number is more like flatline from last year. Like we're pulling in more revenue, but I only want to do what we used last year as an offset. And that will build up the E&D in that fashion.
Which,
But I
to
think,
Steve's point, it would be $300,000. Last year, the offset was 300, so it would be reduced by $75,000, which would fall within the current assessment that we're presenting.
Correct. So that's why I was saying it's a separate conversation as far as the direction we want to go within that. So,
Gene, if I may, just, again, the time frame. We've got another school committee meeting on March 21st. My budget hearing is April 4th, which is a month away. And at that point, it's still 2 weeks later with the committee makes to make a vote. So it just would be real important from a public hearing perspective. I would, and Mr. Baker could speak, if the account is established by both towns, this body's already voted it, and the decision by this board was to reduce it to a zero balance, but keep the assessment the same, I would certainly be supportive of that as superintendent, because the bottom line is it would allow us greater flexibility within the monies that we had to look at E&D, or maybe to reestablish some monies down the line in special education stabilization.
Right.
I was not convinced when I made my initial presentation, though, that the towns would support that piece. What you're basically saying at that point is that the towns are going to support the percentage increase that you have in front of you of 5.9 in Freetown and 3.6 in our operational. And they've already made it clear, at least in Lakeville, that they were not willing to do that. So that's why I built in some monies in there, so.
Derek?
What I don't understand is if your assessment doesn't change and it's the same amount of money, why don't you support this mechanism?
I don't,
It is beyond comprehension, other than to say, we want to control your money and your dollars. And that is not what they're elected to do. That's what we're elected to do. So
it's a
I
problem.
totally disagree with that. My philosophy is, this philosophy the towns have always told us from the beginning. We give you what we can afford, you do what
do
you
with it
want,
what you
you
want,
want
yep.
with it.
Yep.
If the towns can accept those increases, there should be no caveat, oh, I can fund this, but I'm only funding it if you put it over here in this bucket. That is totally,
But that's not what they said. That's not what one of the towns have said. They have said specifically that they could not support the full assessment as we had to put in, which includes the special ed fund of 250,000, it was the last FinCom meeting, out of their operating taxable revenue.
Yep. And that's why I think they would show some support for stabilization, because they would take monies from other areas other than.
Correct.
but correct me if I'm wrong, their assessment doesn't change though.
right.
They're still getting assessed the same
No,
money.
but
Where
we-
they pull it from is a different
Yeah,
story.
correct.
So that doesn't change their assessment. They could go to town meeting and say, hey, we agree with this, this is how we want to fund it. So I don't think that them saying, hey, we don't agree with this, but we agree with the stabilization so we can fund it this way makes any sense to me. Their assessment is not going to change. We're going to go to them and say, you got to give us this kind of money. I would love clarification to know that, is it true that we can change that assessment in order to accommodate the town's ability to fund it out of their own different pots of money?
Well, that's the question.
That's the question that
That
we
is the
have.
question.
My belief is, I don't think that you can change the assessment. The assessment's the assessment. They can identify the resources to fund that assessment, but I don't think it's gonna change the number.
And they have, and again, I'm not taking the position of supporting this town's position, but the town has been consistently sharing with me that they do not feel that they should support the operational budget from one-time
Yep.
anticipated funds. That's what their argument has been. I'm not saying I'm in agreement with that, but
Let me just finish with this. In all of this, remember, we have not billed the towns for that $650,000 that we took
That's
out of
right.
E&D. This is a mechanism to do that. That's my point. We have not been made whole on that, and the town's reaction to that at FinCom was, well, you never asked for it. That was the town's reaction at FinCom of, hey, the fact of the matter is, in my belief, and I explained this at FinCom, I felt like we were trying to work with the towns. We took it out of E&D in hopes that the towns would recognize that. They were complaining they had no money, so we went, we're at a point now where, hey, you know what, it's different. We understand that you've closed money into E&D. We've never been made whole, and the reaction is, well, you didn't bill me for it.
Yeah.
Recognize the fact that we have no E&D. This whole mechanism is a political ploy for the town to control your budget, people. That's what it is.
Well, it is. It is. It's the largest budget. They're on camera. Whatever, but,
It's kind of sad that we certainly heard make us whole from the other side multiple times.
we certainly did.
Multiple times.
Remember, folks, we did make we did make good faith effort years ago to make a town whole out of our E&D funds.
That's Bob's point. Yep.
And that has not been recognized either, so.
No.
well,
All right.
you paid the last amount of that
Yeah,
settlement.
we're all
Right.
looking
Out of
at
E&D
that.
last year.
But
55,000.
that was about making
Yeah.
somebody whole, and, yeah, that was problematic, but whatever. Okay, so we have additional discussion. Did you have additional budget?
Well, we could always have additional discussion here. I think we need to,
I agree.
in support of
I'm
the
sorry.
administration provide some direction here. So
Yeah.
I do think that, and I'd like these specifically on the next agenda, if we're not gonna do anything tonight, I do think we need to come up with that number. That 648 is what we should be asking for, and I don't remember the town saying never build us, but, we can go, I think school choice is another topic area that we need to have a conversation on, right? As far as what's the number that we wanna, as I said, we've talked, we disagree about what the number is. I think that we should be flatlined and go with the $300,000 in our offset, and do that. I think we need to get out of the mechanism that our first line of defense is, you can't touch it because it's paying 5 teachers, right? I think we need to give the discussion back to the school committee of, well, what we would like to apply these funds to. Granted, we have a small area that we can do that. So school choice is another area that we need to.
Well, I'm saying that it's kind of married to the other discussion, and you disagree with me, but.
Well, there's an assessment discussion, right? But we have to come up with some sort of philosophy, because right now, year over year, we just say, here's what's coming in for school choice, we're gonna apply it here. And our hands are
Yeah.
tied as far as what we wanna do with it. It's a revenue piece, it's something that we can flow through the budget in that case.
Yeah, and we have been, it was generated for revenue, now we have to figure out where to put it.
So.
Okay, so, what else?
So the other piece is, you know, as we look through this budget here, there are areas of the budget, for example, the wish lists, right? Some of the items I sit there and I chuckle and I said, wow, I can't believe you're asking for that. But there are other areas that actually make perfect sense to me, but it comes down to a financial discussion, right? And it's not that I sit there and want to increase the assessment leftover right to part of that, but I think there are opportunities in here that we can challenge the administration or even the building principals to say, hey, listen, you want this? What can we give up in return for the ultimate goal that I want to better the services for the kids as a whole, right? You know, we've talked a little bit about grade level paras and the overall effectiveness of them, right? I think we're all agree that we want grade level paras, but and even the principals have said it's great in principle, we just don't have enough of them to really make an effective component to it. So do we keep those in the budget? Do we apply those funds to somewhere else in the budget? What is that? And this is where I think some of these conversations need to go
Well,
to really.
didn't some of these conversations happen at the building level?
They did, and then ultimately
And
I
then they
presented
were
the budget.
removed, right? I mean, the conversations, when they're building their budgets at the building level, things like AP textbooks, all these things that we need are in there, as was the Freetown librarian for a decade. So I think that happens. The question is, should we have participated in the building level discussion?
Well, no,
I don't think so.
it's a different budgeting question to ask, right? So
Yeah.
it's more of the fact of, for example, hey, elementary school teacher, I'm going to give you 75K, 100K of your budget. How would you spend it? And what would you give me back in return, right? So would they, hey, you know what? I really need that special education teacher. I can apply the dollars there and I can remove these 2 functions, right? It's more of a challenge in those type of cases. And I think that's a fair question to the building principals is how would they spend the money, right? They're not going to cut out certain things in that. So, and again, some of those wish list items in the buildings, they would make perfect sense. And other ones requires a little bit of thought process thinking, and maybe the answer is nothing. But these are some of the questions that I think need to happen at the building level.
Yeah, so I mean, I can speak to that. I mean, obviously, the procedure or process is, that does take place, but keep in mind, there are limitations and parameters established by this board as it relates to class size and paraprofessionals that limit a principal to feel they have the discretion to obviously make a determination that a classroom teacher comes before that piece. I intentionally didn't use the word wish list, by the way. I simply identified those items that are not included in this budget, because I don't necessarily think they're wishes. I think they are the reality of what's necessary and needed for future programs and services. So I do want the group to know that the principals absolutely did their due diligence and kind of made discretionary decisions as it relates to what funding they had available to them. But it is within the parameters that we are going to have regular classroom paraprofessionals, for example. And would a principal, given some discretion, maybe look to use that money somewhere else? Yeah, I think the potential exists. I mean, the principal's going to be here for the budget hearing. And I think those are decisions, once an assessment and a dollar amount is made, that can be taken up after, right? After the
That's
budget as
true.
well. It doesn't limit your opportunities. Once you have the money available, you can then kind of make some personnel type of decisions if that's the case. So I just, again, bottom line on the stabilization piece, the dollar amount, whatever the board ultimately would like to see me present in the public hearing on April 4th, as my biggest concern would obviously be what, if any, impact will that have on the bottom line assessment? I mean, because I wouldn't disagree with Steve. If you can establish $648,000 in the special education stabilization and keep the assessment, what that's done is reduced the operational money, right? If you don't increase the assessment but increase the stabilization, you've limited your spending mechanism. So if you're going to increase the special education stabilization amount from the $250 that I've presented, you need to know that either the assessment has to go up to that same amount, or it's going to compromise something that's within the budget. So I just want to make sure that's clear. I'm okay whatever the dollar amount is, but understand that you need to, it does have an impact on the bottom line
All right,
assessment.
so what's the next step? Because we've done this now at
Yep.
7:30, and I'm still not clear on what direction we're going in. I guess you're looking for an idea of an amount, which is really something that needs to be deliberated, not volunteered.
Yeah, I don't need that now.
I just don't know what we do next.
I don't need that amount right now. I'm just saying that's the conversation the committee ultimately has to have prior to taking vote and action, and that's a month away.
And just to be clear, Rick, what we fund to the, we're asking two questions here. You build your operating budget to think what we need for special ed costs, and if that's the additional $250,
Correct.
that's fine.
Correct.
We're asking is, the 648 still does the same, and you deal with the operating. So the ultimate goal here is,
Yeah.
as we know it today, there would be no withdrawal from that special ed fund into operating if things were to happen today, and we know that's going to change.
Correct.
Right? But what you've done is said that I think I'm going to be 250 short, and I've already increased my operating assessment, and that's what we should do and still proceed with that.
Correct.
And I'm saying is we don't reduce the special ed request by 250 because of that.
I would agree.
So, but
I would agree.
yeah, these are areas that we should be tackling. These are areas that we should be doing it. The other, in Rick's point, something that we can tackle afterwards, but things that we need to tackle. The other one is future planning, technology. What are we doing for the next couple of years around that? Because some of it may be resources that we have in place, right? And I don't think we have a solid plan as far as what we need to do, and that's going to really tie to budgetary items that we want to put in place.
Yeah, that's another
and
one.
not just live to a 2.5
It's a
assessment.
wild card, that
we need
one is,
to
yeah.
have those conversations. I don't
Agreed.
feel that we're having them, and I don't think we should be relying on FinCom to have those discussions.
No, we shouldn't. Derek?
Yeah, I agree with Steve. Ultimately, I think what I threw out there and what Steve's talking about, are food for thought for the committee.
Okay.
I really think that we're not in a position at this time to make any number recommendation. What I would encourage the committee is if you have questions about the ideas I have or Steve has, certainly Rick's available, Fred's available, Steve and I can share with our ideas. And I'm not saying that there could be a hybrid solution here. But the fact is, we gotta throw these things out there in hopes that we could come to some agreement with the towns. I'm throwing my ideas out there, by all means. I'm not saying they're end all, be all, and that's what it is. I actually agree, Steve and I have a lot of discussion, if you guys may or may not know. We beat things up, we talk at FinCom. I agree with some of what Steve's saying, but I think the committee has to get a comfort level of, all right, let's think about this and let's see where we're going. I'm pretty adamant myself on, we need to, first and foremost, our priority should be obviously funding the district appropriately and building back E&D.
E&D, yeah.
That's my priorities.
I agree.
Outside of that, to Steve's point earlier, if we have a good E&D, then I'd love to have a stabilization account. However, what I would tell you is if the mechanism to not flow through E&D is correct, if they're correct, and I think we need clarification on how they can fund this stabilization account, the towns. If there is a way they can fund it, or if they are forced to fund it and they can fund it to the tune of $650, and they're willing to do that out of their own stabilization account, I'd be more willing to listen to what that is. But keep in mind, you know, being hamstrung with no E&D is putting us in a very
It
precarious
is.
situation.
It's not good. No,
So-
we
so
all
that's-
agree there.
I think
Okay.
we need to think, it's all food for thought at this point.
All right. I think unless anyone wants to continue beating this into the ground, I think we can move on. Oh, the donation, we have to vote on the donation. We have a note from Barbara.
The first are 4 items for the high school. It would be my recommendation that you accept the following donations to the Athletic and Wellness Department as presented by Dr. Starkey.
So moved.
So, second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any any against, any abstentions? Obviously, those pass, and I'm sure the letters have gone out.
We'll take it.
Yeah. All right, then we have,
Likewise, we have Assawamsett, a similar generous donation
yes,
for leveled libraries and also tablets.
Cal.
My
Okay.
recommendation to accept the donation as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
And second. All in favor? I'm sorry, discussion, Steve.
I would never turn away anyone that wants to donate something. I guess my concern is, does Craig have any issue that their Galaxy
Oh,
tablets are
about
outside of?
compatibility?
Yeah, no,
What
that
our
was,
standard.
in fact, what's not shown here is that was the first step in the process. Before the donation was made, it was vetted through the technology department, both support and he was supportive of these being purchased. In spite of the fact it's not consistent with Chromebooks per se, but there was a multiple use for this within the classroom, and he was comfortable with that from a service perspective as well.
Sure.
These are new, is that correct?
These are new, correct.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposing extensions? Then we have field trip. Freetown Elementary, heading off to, I forget
Yes,
where they're
from
going.
Mr. Ward, it's an out-of-state field trip, so consistent with our policy, that's why the field trip, which is, I believe is pretty self-explanatory, there's a lot of detail, it's May 25th. It would be my recommendation to approve the field trip, this out-of-state field trip as presented by Mr. Ward.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposing extensions? That's great.
We do have one item for surplus that came in after the agenda that should be in your packet there. It is listed from Mr. Baker, from Mr. Souza, request for items to be declared surplus.
Move to approve. Second.
Yep. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Great. I wonder what they're going to do with this cracked deck on the audit.
The net audit summary, Mr. Baker has provided you an overview in addition to the booklets themselves. In the absence of Mr. Baker being here, if you have an opportunity to read through these riveting documents, I think the
just
bottom
read the
line is,
letter.
there were no, I guess
Yep.
the bottom line Mr. Baker would typically share is there are no audit findings required to be reported in accordance with the uniform guidances, and he would generally say that. This is informational. Action does not need to be taken in relation to this, so I just want to make you aware of that.
Steve?
I do have a couple of questions on these reports, but I won't bore this committee with them. But I'd like to at least understand, we may not have any required findings, but were there any strongly recommended from the audit?
There
And we
was a
can, as I
recommendation,
said, I could follow up with Fred
Yeah, well,
afterwards
yeah,
on
I'd
that.
ask that you to do that.
Build up E&D.
Yeah.
If that comes from our auditors, we can share that. But,
But,
so I could follow up with Fred on them, and I understand this is just,
All right, and then maybe if anything
Yeah.
wonderful comes out of that,
Sure.
you can share, that'd be
Got it.
great. Security update, we had discussions on this, I'm happy to see this on the agenda.
Yeah, so I recognize the time frame and the weather conditions literally outside. What I wanted to share with the committee is this document here, or this booklet here, references not only, but really the proactive approach that this district has taken in working with the Lakeville Police and the Freetown Police. This contains our crisis manual, our emergency medical response plan, our assessments which have been done in both towns in detail, our security district assessments, our school resource officer, all of the training that our staff have had for the past 4 or 5 years, both on the student and staff level. I had a very proactive, excellent meeting with both police chiefs and my business manager on Monday, both Chief Abbott and Also, Chief Oliveri met with me in my office, and we talked about next steps in the process. And it really was to convey the message to the community that in light of the tragedy and the shooting in Florida, but in addition to security as late as this weekend, as it relates to storm pieces, I have to tell you, the relationship we've built with the police department. I spent most of my Sunday from about 7:30 in the morning to 7:30 at night talking to town officials, town departments, both police, getting pictures, trying to make a determination on whether it was safe to have our students return to school on Monday. And it was really a credit, and I thanked both police chiefs for their willingness to step up in one instance where they didn't have a highway coordinator and send pictures and talk about road closures. So when you talk security, it goes sometimes beyond the campus, right? The schools themselves, but to the towns in itself, and we were real pleased. I'm doing a follow-up tomorrow morning at 9:30. I'm doing a walkthrough at FES with the one school that Freetown's responsible, with the police chief. In addition to we don't have a school resource officer for that school, but we kind of have a designated person, Officer Levesque, who's going to be there doing training in the morning. And we're taking a look, just to give you an idea, in 2013, so two predecessors, right, two superintendents prior to me, Freetown Police did a risk assessment for their school, as we have done for all the Lakeville schools with Lakeville Police. They identified 30 recommendations. In those 30 recommendations, we have completed 25 and have successfully implemented 25 of them, and are working on the other 4, one of which is actually a revisit. At the time, it seemed like the right thing to do, and now things change in relation to responses and things. But so that's the success stories we've had. We're not complacent, or simply ignoring the fact that on any given day we can do things a little bit better. We have spent a great deal of time, as this community knows, but also this committee knows, in relation to campus security with our high school, and video and cameras and live feed. I was able to share with them in the office. Keep in mind that at my computer, I basically have access to all of those, as does the police department in Lakeville. We're working on it in Freetown to get that same access. In other words, they can pull up and actually see everywhere in our building, and so they also have the capabilities within their cruisers to do so. So there's some real successes, and one of the things I think that has happened, obviously, again, is the whole dialogue and the politics behind it. We've really kind of refrained from that. We just talked about how can we make this place safer for our students, how can we make sure people are engaged, all stakeholders in that piece. I obviously recognize time frame. If I had more time, I certainly could do so. There's some transparency in relation to communicating to parents and stakeholders that we're doing that, but there's also a sense of some privacy and security that you don't want to release all that information. But it continues to be a dialogue, and we're pleased with the current. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions.
No, I had just asked that you provide this update in light of things that have happened, but also I think it's important for people to know that in terms of safety and security, we live in a dynamic environment. It's not static, and you cannot sit back and say what worked last year is going to work this year. Always have to be forward thinking. So I'd asked for this review, and as it turned out, he had already scheduled a meeting with the 2 chiefs, which I was very happy about. But we have agreed that these kinds of dialogues are going to be happening regularly, because this is the kind of thing that is going to be evolving over time, and it must evolve over time to be responsive. So I saw Steve and I saw Bob.
2 things. One, I think it's important that the 2 communities understand, in light of what happens, school cancellations or what have you, is an open conversation with the towns. It's not just made
Correct.
On a whim. So let's just put
That's
that. My second point is more a question. Do we think it's valid or have some value to schedule like an informational meeting? People may not attend, but it's just to talk a little bit about our security, what we're doing, and have the resource officer, what have you.
Yeah.
I think it would open up the lines of communication with the parents, just to let them know what the district is doing from a security perspective. Because I still think a lot of parents in this community don't understand what we have from a cameras, surveillance, all that aspect, or the open communication with the 2 respective towns, police departments. I don't wonder if just a quick 45-minute, hour meeting is scheduled, open meeting that they can come and take a look and listen.
We have done that in the
And
past. Yep.
if they don't attend, it's their own fault, but
Right.
just from a transparency
Well,
perspective.
especially for parents of young children, some of these meetings aren't easy to attend. Bob?
Yeah, the additional procedures that we haven't done
Alice?
how much is it an additional funding that's keeping us from doing that?
No, it's not a fund, so when I referenced those recommendations, what I neglected to mention, there were about 15 or 20 items that they didn't recommend at the time that we've also since, with the fluid nature of activities and
Yep.
changes in procedures and protocols put in place. There are some facility issues that we need to address over there. It's a satellite campus in relation to cameras and then having a direct feed to the police department that were a little, that make it a little bit more challenging over in Freetown compared to the campus, Bob, to your point.
They have signal issues over there too,
Yes.
so they're working on that.
But there's not something, and I want to, we talked about this. There is not something that we're saying has to happen from a security perspective, but we're choosing not to because we can't afford it, right? Because at the end of the day.
It's important for people to know that, it's a
Okay.
great
Yeah.
question.
So-
Sherry?
Steve, I talked to Rick after the tragedy about exactly what you suggest, and he said that he's had a number of people reach out to him by telephone, by email, that he had directed. I almost wonder if we have a bona fide group to come in and so forth, and to come in. I think perhaps people feel as though they should go, rather than because it's the right thing to do, rather than the fact that they're really worried about it. I think we've got such an open communication with Rick that I'm not sure if I think we need one more outing for parents.
Well, I didn't want to invite it because it looked like it's knee-jerk, but what I wanted to do is make sure we had internal controls.
Sounds
we
like,
do.
sounds like Rick has done a nice
And
job
Jean
with that.
referenced the same piece. So what I want to assure people is, one thing I think we've done real well here is we've taken the school level piece and those groups that are active, the PTOs, the school councils and principals and communication, and we've done that. With all due respect to some of my colleagues, I know that have attempted to have these public forums, they've been in empty auditoriums. And I guess, from my perspective, having been in education for 30 years, they sound and look good, but they are knee-jerk, and part of what I wanted to share with you is, this was a document and things that I had in place. I didn't actually do it for the purpose of the police
I
chief.
wanted to show that it was current, that's
The meetings, and it is interesting, it's just something I've kind of compiled over time. We're really taking a real proactive approach, and it's interesting, when I set this up with the chiefs, I should add, not taking too much time, one of the chiefs said, is there an issue? Because we do have such dialogue and communication that, we don't necessarily need a scheduled meeting, because we email and text, and I use the Sunday example. It wasn't related to the shooting. This is in relation to the safety, well-being of our buses and our kids traveling. I mean, so here I had a police chief Sunday morning. I'm literally out in my car getting some gas, and he's sending me pictures so I can forward those pictures of those road closures to the transportation director, Mr. Zendes, to make sure that we have made some adjustments in relation to routes. That was updated throughout the day on Sunday in both towns.
I absolutely believe that, yes.
Where at 1 o'clock, they were saying, no longer necessary. I was
Right.
communicating that. And so, to Steve's point, I do appreciate that. I think sometimes that parents feel, and through social media feel that, like, in a vacuum, I'm kind of sitting there saying, looks like it's a windy day, I'm going to not have school. No, I mean, there's a lot of individuals are part of that process and should be part of that process.
Absolutely.
To make that determination. Technology helps, but I mean, you had some town officials stepping up. I have to tell you, both towns, town officials, Board of Selectmen, call me individually on Sunday to talk about the status of their towns and where we're at, what they could do to help in the process.
No, I
relation-
just, they
yeah.
really do step up for those kinds of things, and so does Ken Resendes, frankly.
Yes.
So let's move this along, folks. Thank you for that too, Rick. I really do appreciate the update.
The school calendar's there just for a first
This is our
reading.
first read, so
Yeah.
no action on that. We have our
Steve has a
reports.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Just a couple of questions, and I think we can look at this at second reading. Just the placement of like the full professional service day, November 13th. I don't know if there's a particular reason for that particular day. It just seems like it's already so close to Thanksgiving. I know last year we did it on the 1st, which was very much appreciated by the communities because it was a day after Halloween. But I think they would appreciate the fact that it would be a long weekend. But we now have a 3-day week and a 2.5-day week. So I didn't know if there was a particular reason for that.
Yeah, it was actually, it was intentionally paired around the weekend, to extend that piece and not make for 3 or 4 consecutive disruptive weeks is really what the rationale. And, you know, in the past, we've done a couple things. We've tried to mirror our professional development day with other districts. We did address the after Halloween piece when I looked at the current calendar being it on a Thursday, to have that type of PD and then come back for a Friday, talk about what was our attendance gonna look like. So I was a little apprehensive, honestly, about scheduling that. It's open for dialogue. There's not a requirement that it be on that time frame, but it was intentionally built around that long weekend. It does, I often have parents say to me that how expensive it is to take a vacation on other times. Middle of November is an opportune time, and I think some parents potentially and families maybe take the opportunity of an extended long weekend around Veterans Day and take advantage of that and maybe not miss school time as a result. So it was done intentionally, Steve, but it's not something that the committee, you know, couldn't certainly have some dialogue and discussion about.
And then I'm going to reiterate my half-day placement midweek is, I know we had originally said to poll teachers and community, and then we took that off the plate, but I still think a midweek half-day is moving it to the weekend type thing is amenable to, I know parents would appreciate that, and I know
We
teachers
did
would on the
that.
same
We
front.
did
So-
do that several years. I pushed for that actually years ago, and it wasn't successful. I was hoping they could all be on Fridays.
I've kind of split, again, good and bad and different. I've tried to split that difference a little bit. If you notice, I've actually identified different dates for the PD, so it's not just all falling on a Wednesday or Monday or Tuesday. I kind of have spread that out a little bit.
Yep, and they're split. So this is the first read. And we have basically almost a consent agenda thing here with these reports.
Yeah, at this point, in the absence of the directors, for a variety of reasons, weather-related and
Yep.
health-related, my request would be certainly at the next session on the 21st, if this specific question, an item that I can
I
answer
agree.
tonight, great. Otherwise, I think the directors would
Well, I think
respond.
that we're agreeing as we get into budget anyway, we don't need them here for every meeting, that we accept the reports, and if we have questions, we can either direct them directly to those directors or to you, through you. So I'm good with that. So superintendent, we're on the subcommittee.
Yep, I've put together what I would consider to be a mid-cycle progress report for the subcommittee. We haven't established a date, but I hope
Nope.
to maybe do that in the next week or 10 days,
Yep.
where we can set up a time so that, in fact, the committee can begin the activity, which needs to be an end-of-the-year evaluation
Yep.
for me within kind of a 2-year cycle. But I put a document together. We'll set something up, Jean, through you as the chair,
Yep,
for the subcommittee to meet with me, and I can make sure I share that information.
and I know they can't wait. Okay, next one is policy.
Met this evening. We have a couple of policies that need to be, went through a first reading, so they'll be at the next full meeting for approval. There is one, a wellness policy that is updated, but as a precursor to that, there's a wellness committee in the district, and there needs to be a school committee representative
Oh.
on that. So our position would be is at our first April meeting after town elections, where we have the reorg subcommittee, that be added. So that
Yeah.
way, Sherry nominated Bob, and it was unanimously approved.
Beautiful thing.
Bob,
Nice, thanks.
Bob.
Thank you.
Bob, Steve nominated Bob, not Sharon.
What do they say about payback?
Yeah.
It's Steve.
And then the rest of the policy manual, we're just going to continue on with that.
Hammering away at it. Okay, thank you. Any other business?
Well, FinCom, we did meet last
Oh, I
Thursday.
thought we beat that one to death, but go ahead. Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
FinCom, we did meet, and then we have next meeting is scheduled for the public meeting. So,
Okay, thank you.
I just have one question, other business that may probably come before the meeting. Have we heard from the town of Lakeville? Did
Oh, yeah.
they vote on the statement of interest?
No,
Oh,
no,
they did not,
it
no.
is, it is my understanding that Mr. Baker is going to go to next Wednesday's Board of Selectmen meeting, where they will be placing that on the agenda. It was on the agenda for the meeting that they had here.
Do we know what time?
I don't have the time frame. I believe the meeting's at 6:30. It was on the
Okay.
agenda for the joint meeting. They didn't get to it, if you recall, and then
Renee,
didn't take action.
could I ask you to find out where we are on the agenda and just email me?
Sure.
I would like there to be some Lakeville representation there at that meeting, if at all possible, if Mr. Baker is going to be there.
Yeah, it's our intent to bring forward
If
and
we can,
get their vote again.
make an effort
Yeah,
to
that's a
go
good idea.
and show our support for the elementary school, I think we should.
All
We
right.
have the information all prepared already.
Okay, and it won't take any longer than
As long as you know exactly when you're going,
That-
that's so
that's-
helpful,
Yeah.
yes.
that's why.
I totally agree.
Next Wednesday.
So we have an executive session. Do I have a motion? We're not coming back to open
We
session.
do need to come back into open
Oh, we
session.
do,
for the-
that's right,
for
I'm
the-
sorry, we do, absolutely.
vote.
So the motion is reason number 2,
So moved.
and return to open session. Second. In a second, okay. We need to.
Roll call.